Hey guys, Baileywiki here. It's January of 2023, and we've got another big release for you. This is the monthly release. We've got lots of new Foundry basic content, which is all around sort of Elvish designs and sort of a more continuation of Affluent and Castle designs and releases that you saw in the past. We've also got a ton of new tiles that we've introduced that will give you not only decor but things that you can use to sort of alter and make your scenes more interesting. Got a lot of new scenes that go with all of this, and I'll walk you through all of it today. You'll also get some design with me videos to show you how I made some of these scenes, to show you how you can use all of these components to either make changes or make entirely new creations for yourself. We also have a ton of Dungeondraft assets being released this month as well across all of our asset packs. So not only the Kitbashed packs, but base assets. We've got building packs being expanded. We've got new roofs and other things that you've seen in VTT now also added to Dungeondraft, so you guys can design really, really nice looking scenes like you guys are seeing here inside of Dungeondraft as well. And then last but not least, for our advanced Foundry users, we have a bunch of 3D content from Swift. New pieces, new modular components, new scenes as well. And we're also announcing a contest. So this month, January of 2023, all of the 3D assets are going to be available to all tiers, including channel supporter tiers. So even if you're just a channel supporter at $3 a month, you can get all of the 3D content just for the month of January. And we're doing a really cool contest with that. If you become a Patreon at the $3 tier, you can get the 3D canvas for free with that. And Ripper's got a new map sharing tool, which Swift will explain to you, and you'll see multiple posts on this. But you can essentially build 3D maps and then share them with the community. You just have to have the base assets. You have to be a Patreon of wherever the base assets came from, and you can mix and match and post your own scenes. So we're going to do a contest where Ripper and I are both giving out two free 1-year subscriptions to our Patreon. So if you win, that's like a big deal. That's a lot of Patreon for free. And we're going to give two prizes out. So two people will win, one for best body of work and one for best overall scene. So check it out and jump right in there to Swift stuff. Even if you haven't been using 3D, this will be a good time to experiment, because heck, you might, if nothing else, you can learn a little bit about it, but you might even be able to get free Patreon for the next year from both of us. So with that, let's jump into the release. So in terms of where the new content can be found, you're going to want to make sure that you update the Affluent district, and you also want to update Nuts and Bolts, and you want to update Towns. Between those three, that's where most of the new content is. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't update everything else, because a lot of times we're repairing things or refactoring prefabs and stuff like that. So certainly feel free to just hit update on everything. But the stuff that's really important if you want the new content is Nuts and Bolts, Towns, and then District 5, Affluent District. Okay, so let's talk about where to get all the new content. First of all, for the Foundry basic content, you just go look for your Towns module or Compendiums, and in the prefabs, under new, you'll find all the new tile packs. Zephyr will go into detail on this. But most of the new content is in the city compendium. So if you go to your prefabs, open up your Affluent folder, and you will find all the Elvish buildings. We put them in there because for size reasons, we didn't want to build another module, and they do double as sort of opulent assets. So we put them in the Affluent district, and then that's the prefabs. The scenes themselves you can find in the scene compendium under new, and you have all of the new scenes as well as all of the inventory scenes for the release in here as well. So let's go through all of the new assets. First of all, we have Elvish and Castle expansion inventory scene. This is showing you an expansion building on the castle expansion from last month. Similar sort of design concepts. These are a lot cleaner, still colorable, still have the same elements that you would expect, like you can right click them and select versions that are not colorable. For example, these are more tintable versions. I opted for relatively generic stylization so that you could put things, you could use these in other environments, not just Elvish, right? So a couple of these have overhead tiles built in. This room, for example, does have a roof that you can delete or change with something else. They all have at least one door put in them, so you can just easily put these doors, somewhere else that you need to. Remember, you have to have token attachers, quick edit mode on if you want to change these. Notice these all have alternative doors in them too. So either these happen to be colorable with a tint applied to them. You can make them other colors as well if you end up wanting to tint some of these rooms. This room does have an upstairs as well. It's got it's levels enabled, and you can basically have players walk upstairs. They'll bump up to level 2 essentially, and then they can walk across here, walk across the bridge, have some more tactically interesting stuff going on. This one has a choke point here. These are considered not buildings. These are considered rooms, and they, for example, go up infinite height. There's no roofs on them. There's no external stairs. And again, you can right click them for tintable versions. I'll show you the alternative to these, the buildings here, in just a second. We did include tile sets for all of these. In this case, you've got all of the portals and overlays, including stairs. Just look up Elvish portals and doors tile set. You also have all of the furniture. The furniture these are all set at the right spot. So if you just drag them in, they work. They all have multi-face tiles enabled on them. These don't. These Elvish furniture. So the idea here is to be able to use colorable and non-colorable versions. There's some with multiple versions here. You've got rocking chairs. These are tintable versus not. And the idea is to give you a lot of different flexibility as far as how you want to use these. And it's also meant to make these so that you can lay them on top of other assets. So what I wanted to do was be able to let you leverage all of my existing building assets, but be able to apply some of these things to make them look a little bit more Elvish than they might normally start as. And I give you plenty of examples in the sample scenes of how to do this, as well as I'll be releasing some Design With Me videos that show you how. These are just different examples and alterations to this particular table, for example, and you can colorize them with the Dungeondraft Token Magic Effects filter. Here's a completely colorable version of this table. For example, if you wanted to make a green table, it's entirely easy to do that. And you can see it's pretty effective for just giving yourself some easy changes to your environment. The rest of these also have colorable versions. So feel free to play around with those. We do include some Michael Gelfi audio here. In this case, I opted for his music this time. This is a nice kind of ominous thing for some of these maps where, there might be enemies playing, that sort of thing. And then we've got also just sort of a more dramatic piece of music. These are both loops, so they'll play infinitely, and I've got some examples of these loops playing as ambient beacons within some of the scenes. We have a lot of new Elvish pillars. Again, these are just to help sort of make any space a little bit more Elvish. These could be stone pillars with, these kind of roots coming out, or you can change these pillars to, another. They're all tintable essentially. And you'll be able to see examples of how I use these as well. All of these pillars also, in a similar fashion, you can use these. They do have multiple versions. So here's a wood version that's got colorable leaves around it. Or you can just go with this. Maybe it's stone, right? Maybe like a faux wood with stone color, or you can tint them. Really just meant to be flexible in lots of different ways. All of the things you see in red are colorable. These torches can be interacted with. When you drag them in as prefabs, they do automatically increment themselves so that you can have multiple torches on a scene and have them interact independently. There are walls and things built into these as well. Now those same rooms are also available as standalone buildings. So you can see they're the same general shape. Let me show you the key differences here. Right, so there's our base shapes. One of the key differences is all of the walls only go up 9 feet, or in this case, it goes up 20 feet because this is 2 stories. So that's so that you can put roofs on top, right? And I will get into the roofs here in just a second, but I've got some really, really great looking, colorful, nice roofs for you guys now. You can use them a lot more than just what you see here. We'll get into that in just a second. Some other key differences of the buildings is they have these staircases that come attached to them. You don't have to have the staircase, but I attached it just so that it's easy to do. And to show you an example of how they work, if you grab the actual staircase. See, this is just a regular staircase. There are 2 different versions of it. So if you open this up and you go down to your staircases, you can see that there's a version where the stairs go a different direction. So you can change those around as you like. Just pick one where the stairs going up instead of down. And they're meant to be just twisted around and put in different places. This could be, an exit out of this building and down. You could flip it and you could have the exit leading up to somewhere else. So the idea is just to give you some staircases that you can just sort of always position around in different ways that would make sense to, to use the GM for how you're designing your particular scene. There are staircases, these are sort of half stairs, and then you've got these staircases that are full stairs. And you can see you can just reposition them in different ways. Again, look at these sample scenes to get an idea of how I maneuver these things around, but you can have them hidden underneath your buildings and really do quite a bit with them. You can see these are the same stair pieces down here, just exposing different pieces of them. Here's one where I wanted it to look like a little bit of a curve coming out. So again, these are standalone buildings, and these stairs are meant to be able to plop them right down on any map and have them be totally self-sufficient and standalone on their own. Next up are the Elvish buildings and Elvish hallways. These are smaller versions of the large rooms that you just saw. Those large rooms are meant for like large battles or, kind of boss rooms and things like that. These are for connecting those rooms together in different types of ways. So whether you're building a dungeon and you want the infinite height walls, or whether you're building a town and you want to just drop in these buildings in a way that looks believable, that's what these are meant to do. They're otherwise the same shapes. The buildings do come with doors, but you can see with these buildings, the other version is just comes with windows, just so it's easier to have windows. This version also has these windows automatically open, right? So you can look out them. You can certainly add more doors. You can remove things, but that's another kind of key difference of buildings is they're just meant to function more as just a drop-in building for your scenes. All of the roofs are, of course, colorable. Keep in mind there is a token magic effects bug at the moment where if you have too many overlapping tiles with token magic effects applied, it disables the lights underneath them. So, if you find that that's a problem, just uncolorize your roof and keep them as red. We also have these Elvish paths and then these lattice covers that go on top of those paths. Really meant to be sort of a modular system for being able to build like a path coming along or outdoors and be able to have this kind of nice, pretty, lattice work kind of over the path, and the players can walk under it. It doesn't occlude, just kind of a nice effect. Here's some of your Elvish stairs. These do come as tile sets, and like I mentioned before, you can reverse the direction of the stairs if you find that you need to do that. Same thing works for the bottom piece. This system is designed to work with the recent castle expansion and the other pieces. So now you have just more pieces that you can work with and play with as you're building out underground dungeons, or you're combining this with the other castle release. You can just connect more up. I did go for a lighter shade with all of these, and that's by design because you can always darken, but it's hard to lighten. So this is a background tile, and if I want to, I can come in here and darken this. And I can also make it dirtier. a little bit more distressed. But it's hard to go the other direction. So that's why I went a little bit lighter and try to keep these a little bit more generic. You will notice you have some variations. This one does not have a crest there, whereas this one does. So you can play around with what these variations ultimately give you. These won't really have any variations at all, but feel free to check it out and play around with them. Now, this scene is really important. These are all overhead tiles, and if you go to your overhead view, you can see they lighten. But these are all of the Elvish roofs that have been introduced. You can see they're just great roofs in general. I used some AI generation, some other things to be able to create some of these patterns, and they're just super flexible. They work with each other. They are built to cover all of the other Affluent room expansions. So you'll see in the sample scenes how you can use these roofs to really upgrade any of the maps, and you can use all of these roofs to create your own cities, which I'll show you as well. Also developed these Elvish domes. These are just interesting. You'll see them again in the sample scenes. Anything in red is colorable. Anything that's white is tintable, and you can layer these on top of each other. So you can create some really interesting effects. You can apply like a magic effect to this one and then overlay something on top, this tile on top of it, which doesn't have the effect and essentially gives you a magical effect underneath. Lots of different things that you can do with this. I've been experimenting a lot with these. They're super effective. You can also just use these as standalone pieces, like lattice pieces and things like that. So you'll find that you can really create some interesting parts of your maps just by dragging these in and using them. You have Elvish domes here as tile sets, and they drag out and they give you all of the options when you drag it out to a scene. Now, Zephyr, in his section, will tell you a little bit more about all of the new tiles that we've pulled in as well. So you have lots of armor and colorable armor pieces, as well as lots of ornamentation pieces. You'll see how I've used some of these in the design of some of these environments as well to take existing assets and make them more Elvish looking. So let's jump into the sample scenes. This scene is called the Elf Tavern. It's a very large scene. And you can see as you approach, you've got, some ambient noises and things like that. This happens to be a 2-story tavern. And I call out all of the different features that you'll want to know as a GM, as I've been doing, where your players can come in here and explore some of these spaces. But you can see there's an entire upstairs here where your players can sleep. But another cool feature is when you turn the lights down, lights start to come on. You have this more of a magical, eerie glow coming from underneath the trees, and it really creates just a beautiful effect. You can see all of the pieces at work from the release. Here, this was entirely populated with components to make it look like a tavern. And these are all colorable, and you can play around with each one of these. You can see just the effect of the ambiance. It's really, really nice. I did put a little plot hook over here, the portal, as you guys have seen, that I introduced in the last one. This might be a portal to the Feywild. You can certainly replace it with something else, but I wanted you to see how you can use all these components like plot devices to basically create that one kind of interesting thing or surprise about the map that you're playing with. And we have a whole series of elf villages. And you'll see that these use the same things that we saw before. In this case, you can hear some of the new Michael Gelfi audio that's on a loop. Here's all of these buildings dropped in just kind of the way they are. There's buildings like this one that have then been populated with tiles. So you can come in here and drop in your own tiles from my stuff or really any other artist, right? So you can decorate these things any way that you want to. A lot of interactive components here. You can see this was also decorated as sort of a large tavern, right? So your players can discover this really opulent part of this Elvish village. They can walk up these stairs through the main door, and you can see some of the castle pieces bolted in. So there might be some rooms where there might be some things to discover. Here's a kitchen, all just added in. You can rearrange these any way that you want. and more ambiance changes here at night with some changes in sound and things like that. Remember also, when you're done and ready to play this map, you can delete all of the map notes by going to your token layer and clicking this trash can here, and you can delete all of the map notes instantly that way. Or you can hide them if you don't want them to be visible to your players. Continuing on in the village, this is an example of how we use a bunch of the other existing assets. These are all buildings that you've seen before. These are marketplace components, all reusable and reskinned to be able to have some Elvish flair to them. You can see how we're using some of these pillars. These are all interactive components. You can, essentially change these just by double clicking on them. All the wagons. You can change all of these merchant stalls by double clicking on them. But you can see how these new roofs came together really nicely, right? These are just recovered and recovering assets that already existed. So this is how you can repurpose everything to essentially create an Elvish town. And at some point here, I'll build a Dwarvish town as well. But this is really just to help you guys maximize your utility from everything. I recommend you come in and check out all the little special secrets and things that I put in here for you guys and for your players. Here's just some Elvish tables applied to, the normal tavern. We've got some of the overhead, archways in place. Again, just to help you guys repurpose everything that you've got. Really like this scene. This is also in the village. This is a street, but you'll notice this street here is actually an asset from the scrolling maps forest path. So you can change this to, a street asset, for example. You can see really quickly we create that type of an effect. This whole town is an example of how we used all of these existing assets to create a town street with lots of things going on and merchants and other stuff that you can use. There's signs for different establishments. You can move these around and change them. I've created, so none of these are real buildings. You can certainly drop in real buildings. This is just showing you how you can just drop in roofs. And I've got a whole video on how I built this. It was super fast. These are all just recolored roofs, sitting at different levels, and really made an entire, functioning street really, really quickly. These are visible to your players. These would be like teleport mats, amongst active tiles, tiles that they can click on and teleport into a business. So it's a really easy way to bring them into maybe a theater of the mind shop rather than, or just a single image of the interior of an apothecary, for example, versus an apothecary that they can walk around and explore. This is showing you how some of these new tiles work from an effects perspective. This is just 2 tiles stacked on top of each other, but this one has a magical effect applied to it. So you guys will see how these work and how I built this and how you can customize it really all that you want. You can see it's just really simple. It's a bunch of, invisible walls and, a bunch of overhead tiles. And the effect is something really delightful for you to have and build. I also wanted to include a dock scene just to show again how I'm using some of these assets. Here we've got some of that lattice work. We've got some of those overlays that Zephyr has showed you in this video. Just things to subtly add a little bit more polish to these. These are all overhead tiles, right, that players can walk under. We've got some nice ambient noises. But it's just this idea of making an environment that looks a little bit higher end. Again, this tile's just introduced. And this one happens to feature the trireme. This trireme is an explorable boat. Right, so you can go down into it, into the lower decks, and you can explore the rest of this boat. So this boat is from the premium compendium. And it's got a lot of features to it. If you guys aren't familiar with the trireme, I won't explain all of them here, but you can change the color and whether these sails are furled and unfurled. You can also change, by the way, every time you change those, it reapplies the token magic effects filter. So keep that in mind. But it's got lots of other things that are changeable on this boat. So again, I won't go through the entire trireme, what's available to you, but it is pretty cool. And you can also remove it. So here is the control token for the trireme. You can drag it out, you can move it somewhere else, you can delete it altogether and drag in a different boat entirely that you want on this scene. The scene also looks really great at night. As you can see. And you've got the Lion Shield Coster here with a different roof on it, again, to show you how you can use some of these assets. But a great place to stock up before your naval trip. Now we're going underground with some of the Elvish sort of underground or non-building components. Here we're walking through a colorized version of this. We're seeing some ornamentation and things added. Here we are up in the upper floor of this particular room. Great for battles and some tactically interesting stuff. But from the second floor, then we can also enter this new area. And as we come into what essentially is a throne room, we find a bunch of other things here. So we do have the removable tile, like you guys have seen in other releases. This is, again, to remind you that you can build these plot hooks in everywhere and they look believable. And then you have this really great throne room with some interesting effects going on, right? So you've got these like custom fairy effects. You've got this, this custom throne here. You can delete all of these things and replace them with other stuff. These are all just suggestions and components. A lot of the other components, this is just an introduced tile, right? You can turn these off and just shows you an example of how all of these things can work together. These are just some treetops and some things from other releases that make it all work. Now, we also want to explore abandoned Elven halls, right? So here you can see the make dirty filter applied. You can see rubble and all sorts of other components applied here. I added a plot hook for you to, experiment with that. You can delete it and put something else in there. We've got all these webbed rooms that should be interesting. And again, these are all just tiles. You can remove all these webs and make these rooms clean. This particular concept is that there's a band of looters that have discovered these elven halls and they've built a campsite here. You can interact with this campsite. You can go inside, all the stuff that you're used to, and then they've discovered this shattered wall, right? Or they've discovered this hidden crypt, right? And this hidden crypt is really just, notice it's a normal wall just with this overlay tile to make it look like that wall was broken down. As we proceed through, we can interact with these crypts. See the interiors, you can change the interiors of those. These are all just built with modular pieces. And the same thing here, we can interact with this crypt as well. See, there's a stair down, but you can make that really anything that you want. Here's just some examples of how we've used lots of tiles to make this crypt look like it's been destroyed, right? And I show you multiple examples of how you can create these on your own. I do recommend Ripper's Dig Down. It's a file browser where if I go into modules, that's all modules I have installed, and I just look up something like pillar, it'll show me everything in my collection that's a pillar. And you can see all of the Baileywiki pillars here in different sizes and capacities, different types of things. You can just drag in, here's some of these pillars. Makes it really easy to find things and pull them in. Oh, it wouldn't be a Bailey release these days without a boss room. So here we've got more of the Elvish components. And we come in here and we're seeing some things from other releases like fire tiles, right? Creating some cool effects on the floor. We come into this larger room and we can see there's a lot of things going on in here, and we have this this platform sitting above. If our players come up, sitting over fire, if our players come up to this level, they can make their way across these giant chains, and who knows what you want to put here on this platform. But this is just an example of a boss room that you guys can come in and immediately put to use. There is a statue over here that as a GM you can move, and you can reveal a stair underneath it. You can delete the stair, make it a treasure, put a different kind of stair there. There's all sorts of stuff that you guys can do. If you hold down shift, you can just move it back. Decided to make this manual because it's really easy to over-optimize and over-automate things. You can certainly automate the movement of this, but I wanted you to have something just really easy that you can jump in and manipulate. This is a magic grove. This is the Dark Grove. It's got these blood splatters that are introduced throughout. And if your players come up here and interact, there's a sound and a light that emanate from this pillar, right? You can change this around, make this anything that you want. This pillar is just a tile that you can move. Now, I wanted to show you how you can change these things. Oh, there's Jinker's rat running around here too, by the way. Here is the same scene, but altered. Now, for your players, they won't see any of these lights that are in the trees here. They'll just, at night, or in the daytime, they'll just see the tops of the trees, which are colored differently. Now, there's this altar in the middle of this grove, and if you click on it, it will magically enable all of these things. And so you can see the lighting. There's under lighting coming from under the trees. Your players will now be able to see all of these glowing components, and it's a really, really nice effect. The music change, things like that. I did want to point out that this is actually a fully lit space. So if I change it to the darkness level, it will decrease the darkness, but these are actually artificially darkened tiles, which is sort of a simulated darkness. And we do that so that these lights in the trees can be seen better because they're actually overhead tiles. There's another scene, again, using some of the underlighting effects that you saw before, some of the different components that you guys have seen. Here we have just tiles introduced, different styles, different coloration. You can see there's a door leading outside, which we'll go explore here in a second. But this one has some levels above. And if we go explore those levels, we can see some of the old Mage releases that we've looked at before. Right? This happens to be an elf mage where everything looks prim and proper and the first level, but we discover that there's some really nefarious experimentation going on up in the upper levels. We go to the outside. We find an asset that we've seen before. This is the plot hook, the magic tree. And if we continue up in this area, we find this gazebo, and who knows what you might want to put in here. This one does not occlude, right? Our players can sort of go inside and still kind of see through it. And of course, if you raise the lights to daytime, all this coloration goes away and it becomes a different scene. And last but not least, we have the Great Tree. We have some of the components from the Ruins and other past releases, a lot of wilderness releases. But we've got this big old tree in the middle. And if we walk under it, you can have all kinds of battles here, right? You may want to put a campsite in here. Your players can interact with that, or you can snuff out that light and all of a sudden cast them into darkness. And of course, you can raise the lights, get rid of the rain, and you can have a very, very different scene to play with. So I hope you guys enjoy all the Foundry Basic content for this month. You can see there's quite a bit that was introduced And be sure to watch some of my Design With Me videos that I'll be releasing on how I made some of these scenes, just to show you how quick and easy it really is to put these together. I think you'll really, really enjoy it.
Alright troops, Swift here again. This month brings with it an expansion of our modular map system with a bunch of intercompatible dungeon tiles. With these, we've been able to include more varieties to allow for more diverse map designs, such as curved or diagonal walls, slanted walls with very slightly offset tiles, corridors, a bunch of one-tile variants, a large staircase to go with the previous month's smaller staircases, and another experiment with the animation system, this door here. There's a few ways to set animated tiles up, and the way I've set this one up is to be in a looping animation on it, so that it requires no additional modules at all to use. In order to open or close it, you right-click on it in tile mode, click on the play button, and then pause the animation once it's gotten to the state that you'd like it to be in. This should work for token vision and collisions, so it should act as if it is a real door opening and closing in the world. But I'd like to get y'all's opinions on this sort of thing and find out whether or not it works for you in real gameplay scenarios. We're also including variations on all these tiles as well. We've got the mossy tiles over there, cracked tiles down here, and then also pristine tiles. What I found looks really good is mixing in the different types of floor tiles into any given dungeon floor. Really kind of break up the environment there, make it look a bit more believably worn. We'll also be including a couple of props, these plus a few others. I think in future months we're probably going to focus more on getting a balance of props to architecture, as well as more pre-built ready-to-use maps. But on the note of ready-to-use maps, here we are in my personal Foundry world here. Speaking of pre-built maps, I'd like to quickly talk about a new feature that's just been added to 3D Canvas. It's going to be quite important as far as the January map making competition goes, which is this Browse Community 3D Maps button up here in the top right of the Scenes tab. It's very simple to use. Click the button to open the browser, and that'll just give you a browsed list of all the files or all the maps that have been uploaded so far. And then when you see one you like, click on the download button in the top right. Since it's only saving the scene data, it's very, very quick. So when I click this, you notice the map is already downloaded and active. So I just need to go ahead and press the 3D button. And we're loaded in. Now, this here is an absolutely lovely map that was created by Leon D. So well done to him for that. Absolutely great use of the particle systems in 3D Canvas, as well as the tiles here to create a forest without impacting performance at all. Absolutely great. So the other thing, of course, is if you've made a map that you'd like to share, it's similarly really simple. Just right-click on the map that you'd like to upload and click on Share Scene. Fill in the details as you'd like. Upload a thumbnail image to Imgur and paste the URL in here, and then click Share. Currently, if you've imported any entirely new assets into your map, then those won't get saved using this system, since it only saves the scene data, which only has pointers pointing to the asset packs that are currently supported, which is the map making pack, the token collection, and the Baileywiki 3D pack, as well as 3D Canvas itself, of course. But of course, all of these maps are just normal 3D Canvas maps, so there's nothing stopping someone from including their own assets into any map that's been shared once they've downloaded it. I expect I'll be creating some maps myself and uploading them to the community browser here as we move through January. It's a really great feature here, the map browser, and I'd really like to see it getting used, so of course I'll be encouraging that by putting my own stuff on there. These maps that I upload here will be separate to the custom maps that will be getting included with the Baileywiki 3D module going forward. I can be more flexible with stuff that I include in the Baileywiki 3D Patreon module, because I can include custom assets and make things more performant and all that sort of thing. So hopefully you should be getting both going forward. Anyway, with all that covered, have a good one and Happy New Year.
Hey everyone, for Dungeondraft, we're going to start with what's new in the Baileywiki Assets A pack. Within Baileywiki Assets A, we have a lot more ornamentation pieces, similar to last month, with 4 new designs of the Dwarven motif. You can see that all of these come in copper, gold, silver, colorable, and line. And so for the colorable and lines, you can set it to whatever color you want to replicate any material or fit any style. Same thing with the lines. These are particularly great if you're adding embellishments to floors or fabrics, etc. Two of the designs also come in mixed material options with copper and silver and gold and silver options. So these are new to you with design 6 and 8 on the Dwarvish side. Going to the Elvish theme, we have 4 new entire designs here, and again available in our traditional materials as well as colorable options. And we can see that Elvish 4 and 5 also have that mixed material of copper with silver and gold with silver. Design number 6 has the usual materials, but then also has wood and some different composites that feature wood with copper, wood with gold in 2 different configurations, and a wood with silver, and of course the colorable options at the bottom. Then there are new design pieces, 10 total for the Elvish theme, and these are all components of the Elvish designs, and they're available in the standard materials as well as wood for the design 6 pieces. All of these can be found in the Baileywiki ornamentation tag. You can also find them in the Baileywiki overlays tag as well, just like all of the other ornamentation pieces. In addition to the ornamentation pieces, there are also now modular armors added to the Assets A pack. You can see that these come pre-configured in top-down and front-facing views, and they have colorable versions, so you can change the different metals to suit either a town theme or reflect a different material. These are available in composites and in components so that you can mix and match and build your own suits of armor. There are 3 designs in metal and 2 designs in scale. The first design in scale has mainly colorable components, and the second design scale also includes extra pieces for straps, etc. And notice that a lot of these components are excellent for making things other than just armor, so we're excited to see what you end up kitbashing with them and how you can create some very interesting designs. And of course, you can also mix and match these armor pieces to create your own custom looks. This is particularly powerful for all of you homebrew DMs who need icons or imagery for the armors and items that you create. You can use these for icons and thumbnails and design a really unique piece of armor that suits your players and your game. Finally, in the Baileywiki Assets A pack, we have tiles and reliefs. These are created using Midjourney and are a little bit more experimental. There are also colorable components that you can use to modify floors, etc. And we really enjoy messing with the different transparency options for these to add different effects. You can find these in the Baileywiki Tiles and Reliefs tag. The modular armors and ornamentation pieces can also be found in Foundry. As a part of the Baileywiki Maps Premium Towns module, there are new scenes for tile packs of the armor and armor components, so you can use these within your games. There are both colorable and non-colorable versions, and you can tint the colorable ones with the Token Magic Effects Dungeondraft Tint macro to set it to any color you want, just like you can within Dungeondraft. It's a really nice effect that you can use to clutter up your maps. And again, we have the top-down and front-facing versions, and these are available in tile packs. The tile packs are prefabs that you can grab from the Baileywiki Maps Premium Town Prefabs Compendium, and then in tile packs. You can find them, drag them out, and it's a control token with the file path listed, and all of the tiles that go within that pack. To use it, simply open up the Token Attacher UI, and attach all elements from this token. You can then safely move around the token without affecting the other tiles. Then you can choose what you're keeping and what you're getting rid of. So in this case, you may want to get rid of all the top-down and the file path, and then just use the front-facing options. Of course, if you want to use any of the armor pieces as tiles rather than dragging from the tile packs, simply navigate to your user data into Modules, then Baileywiki Maps Premium Towns, Maps, Decor, then under Equipment, Armor, you have all of these different pieces that you can drag out as tiles, and the colorable inside of that subfolder. These are in 256 dpi, so you can adjust that and get the size that you want, or drag it out at 256 on your asset grid size to get a 1-to-1 size. If you ever can't remember this file path, it's on the scene and also with all the tile pack prefabs. Similarly, there are tiles and tile packs for all of the ornamentation pieces, not only the new Elvish and Dwarvish pieces from this month, but also from last month as well. So there are 3 distinct motifs, the ornate, and all of these are going to be available in the standard copper, silver, gold, colorable, and lines. And then we've got 3 motifs, the ornate motif, or Chirurgeresca, the dwarven motif, and the Elvish motif. These tile packs are in whole designs and also in design parts that you can use together. And if you want to scale any of these for adding ornamentation to your scenes, simply scale the tile around. You can hold down Alt to maintain the aspect ratio. Colorable versions are tintable with the Token Magic Effects Dungeondraft tint macro, just like the armor pieces, so you can customize them to replicate any material or motif that you're going for. The lines versions are tintable just using Foundry's regular tinting system for tiles, as they are white tiles normally, and you can use these to add really nice subtle effects or entire designs to your maps. Finally, you'll notice that there are multi-tile packs, and this means that all of these tiles use multi-face tiles in order to switch between the different material options. And this is applicable on not only the full designs, but also on all of the different pieces. Every version of a tile, except for the colorable and tintable versions, are selectable using multi-face tiles on the multi version of the tile pack. So we can select through all of these to get the exact material that we want. And of course, you can find these in the Baileywiki Maps Town Prefabs Compendium under the Tile Packs folder. And if you want to find any of these tile packs quickly, simply open up the Prefabs Compendium and then search for tile or tile packs, and then you'll be able to view all of the individual tile sets that we have. You can then, of course, also refine that further. For example, if you put in the multi, it's going to show you all of the multi-face versions, so the ones that you can select between the different materials. You can also select lines for the tintable lines, and colorable for all of the colorable tile packs. This is a good way to quickly and easily find whatever tile pack you are looking for. And once again, if you want to use these as tiles, you can simply follow the file path on the scene or with any of the tile packs. It's in a very similar place to the armor. We're going again into the Baileywiki Maps Premium Towns folder, and then under Maps, in Decor, there is an ornamentation section, and that's where you can find all of these designs, and the red colorable via macro versions are inside the colorable subfolder. Next pack we're looking at is Baileywiki Kitbashed, and we're back into Dungeondraft. To go with our Elvish release, there is also a lot of new Elvish assets. These Elvish benches and chairs have some non-colorable and some colorable versions that you can adjust to have whatever fabric or coloring you want. You can find all of these different designs inside of the Baileywiki seating tag. They are just below the thrones and other modular chair pieces. Then we also have arches. There are 2 different versions of the arches, and they are colorable and non-colorable, with designs using elements from our Elvish ornamentation. Then we have some more natural looking pillars that you can color to suit whatever wood tones you're going for, or give a more fantastic look. All of the different pillar options and the archways can be found inside of the Baileywiki Structures tag in the Dungeondraft pack. Finally, within Baileywiki Kitbashed, there are 2 lattice type overlays that you can find in the Baileywiki Overlays tag. And again, these are all a part of the Baileywiki Kitbashed pack. Our next pack is the Baileywiki Base Assets. This has a lot of our textures and patterns in it, and it got some love this month with some new patterns. You can scroll through your pattern shape tool in order to see all of them, and there's a variety of different options, including these radial patterns. These radial patterns we've really enjoyed using and have a slightly different methodology for them. You'll notice that these have very distinct beginning and ends on an 8x8 side. If you always start in the top left corner of your Dungeondraft canvas, when you draw out the pattern shape, you'll always be able to start in that same top left. So that's how we can make these 8x8 sections that we can then scale if we want a smaller design, or we can use something like the circle tool if we only want the center slice of something. So understanding where your grid begins and ends in Dungeondraft with patterns is really key to getting the most out of this. But we've really enjoyed how flexible these can be and how they add an interesting element to pattern shapes. These are somewhat more experimental, so let us know what you think. Further down, you'll find these different Elvish roof patterns, and they tile seamlessly pretty much anywhere you put them on the canvas. There are also more colorable versions so that you can control what areas you are using. We've really had a lot of fun by changing the colors and tints on these to reduce the opacity to add some extra texture to other sections of our maps. So these are highly experimental but very versatile, and we're interested to see what you guys think of them. Let us know what you want to see changed in the next update. Our final pack is the Baileywiki Buildings pack, and this is where we have the art for all of our pre-built prefabs. First up, there is a now breaking change. This only affects a few of the buildings, but they were in an unoptimized file format and caused some extreme size on the pack. So the ones that you are seeing on screen have been updated to use the WebP file format. They're the ones below the shrines in the Baileywiki Dressed Buildings tag. So before you update to this pack, double check your maps to see if you're using any of these and maybe mark out their locations so you can replace the old PNG versions with the WebP when you do update. After those, we have now added in all of the Class 1 modular pieces from last month's release. So all of these wonderful balconies and rooms that you can use are available in the Baileywiki Blank and Baileywiki Dressed sections. Blank contains the empty, entrance, balcony, and garden versions, while the Dressed has all of the different seating, offices, and bedroom options. So there are 104 new buildings for you to use to kitbash together your own complexes in your cities and your maps. Next, we have the Elvish domes that are added under the Domes tag in the Baileywiki Buildings pack. These can be used for adding different roofs or creating different styles, and they're available in non-colorable and colorable versions. These are also a little experimental as they were generated with Midjourney AI, and we've gotten some interesting effects by mixing and matching the pieces to add some different layered effects, and it's a great way to add some new styles to round roofs. So let us know what you think about these and what you'd like to see more of. And finally, we're returning to the Elvish theme with Elvish roof pieces. These have been kitbashed using various assets, including the new Elvish ornamentation pieces. You can find these on the roofs of the buildings in the new Elvish update to the Foundry VTT modules, and you can use these to create your own roofs. They are colorable and take color quite well, so you can make whatever theme and material you want. And that's going to conclude this month's Dungeondraft release.
So we hope you guys like this release. Tons of fun stuff for you to play around with in here. Let us know what you'd like us to think about or consider in subsequent releases. And if you have any questions on the contest or anything else that we're doing these days, definitely looking forward to interacting over the next month and seeing what you guys come up with. In the meantime, have fun making your maps.